Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining our complimentary conversation series from Vera Fellowship. We're here because Korean aesthetic medicine is a very influential force in global clinical beauty. But providers rarely get to see the system underneath, how Korea thinks about skin quality, how they sequence or stack care, how they build patient trust. And that's why Vera Fellowship exists. It's a clinical immersion in Korea to learn from the leading experts at the source and gain years of strategic and technological advantage for yourself or for your practice. Now, we also know the investment in your education to travel to Korea is a lot. So we want to give you a sense for what you will learn and who you will meet. And this webinar series is that preview. 4 live conversations over the next 2 months, designed as a connected editorial. First, grounding in clinical K-beauty, then moving into AI, then moving into luxury skincare, and then regenerative aesthetics. So today, we're starting with the foundational question. What does clinical K-beauty actually mean? And I am so excited to bring the incredible OGs of clinical K-beauty here to discuss that. But first, introducing my best friend in Korea, Yoon from Gangnam Onni. Gangnam Onni is Korea's #1 consumer app for aesthetic treatments. And because she sits at the center of Korea's market, she'll facilitate today's discussion. Hey, Yoon.
Hey, thanks, San. And hi, everyone. Really happy to be here. And we have 2 amazing people with us today. I mean, like the real ones, real OGs. And Dr. Jung Chinkoo brings the Korea side clinical and operation lens from Gangnam with Seoul National University, the #1 school, the #1 medical school, medical training and leadership across major Seoul aesthetic clinic systems. He gives us the inside view into how top Korean clinics think about consultation, sequencing, maintenancing, and clinical consistency at scale. So Dr. Jung, hi.
Hello, everyone. Okay, good morning. It's actually morning in Korea. So, 안녕하세요. 정진구 원장입니다. I'm the founder of Boom, which is the biggest brand, franchise brand, clinic brand in Korea. And I'm really happy to see you guys. We'll catch up later.
Great, amazing. And now we have another amazing OG, Dr. Eunice Park. Dr. Eunice Park is going to give us the other half, the US side, the translation. And she's the founder of Adam. She is actually a dual board certified facial plastic surgeon, and she's built her whole practice around Korean beauty philosophy and this idea of quality, long-term care that we're going to talk about later. So she knows what it actually takes to bring into a US clinic. So hi, Dr. Park. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Yes. Hi. Good evening, everyone. So excited to be here. Thank you so much to the Vera team. I am a facial plastic surgeon and also practice both non-surgical and surgical aesthetics. I was born in Korea, in Busan, and grew up in New York. So very much kind of looking at beauty and aesthetics and from a dual lens, as well as just witnessing the evolution of just the rise of clinical K-beauty over these years. And so for my colleagues who are tuning in from Korea, I'm 박은지, and 저는 성형외과 전문이고, and Arum is the clinic that is really sort of the first clinical K-beauty clinic in the States. And so excited to really do a deep dive into the history as well as the innovations coming through, speaking with Dr. Jung today.
Thank you. Amazing. And one quick thing before we start, please drop your questions in the chat as we go. We'll get to that as many as we can at the end. Okay, let's get into it. So the first one, we're going to talk about what clinical K-beauty actually means. K-beauty is often reduced to products, devices, glass skin, or medical tourism. But inside clinical practice, the more important question is how providers think, how they assess skin quality, sequence care, prevent overcorrection, maintain results, and build trust over time. So Dr. Park, so when patients in the US say they want K-beauty, what are they usually asking for, and how do you translate that into real clinical plan?
I think what they're really looking is for meaningful transformation. And I think that in the aesthetics industry, there's a lot of promise. And I think K-beauty principles and philosophy has done a really great job of creating, what we talked about, stacked treatments, sequencing, certain elements that produce visible results. And so in this age where so much of what we do focuses around what we see on social media and on videos, there's a lot of meaningful, visible, transformative results. And so when people are looking for K-beauty, clinical K-beauty, they're looking for both this sort of, exciting, experiential kind of element as well as visible results. And so I think that there is a natural element to things, maintaining the anatomy and the structure, but also incorporating really innovative devices, treatments, protocols to provide to the patient the results and therefore kind of the confidence that they're looking for.
For Dr. Jung this time, then inside Korea, before this becomes a global trend, what does clinical K-beauty mean in real clinic operations?
Okay, so first to understand what K beauty clinic is, we should have to, first know the history of how it evolved, now where we are. So the beginning was like in the early 2000s, there was low-end skin care shops a lot in Gangnam. That was quite popular. And on the other side, there was this dermatologic-based aesthetic clinics. So it was not very accessible to many patients. But in the mid 2010, there came out a franchise brand called Toxin Fill. It's the actual name for like Botox and fillers. They do only the pretty procedures, and they standardized all the procedures, and they made the clinic operation system. So that went huge. And then a brand called Bum changed the vibe. So that's what I made with my colleagues. The brand, we aimed for Starbucks. So we wanted the customers, the patients to come and feel comfortable and have a very pleasant user experience. So that kind of make a bigger like a market pie. And then next came we call it the information revolution. So apps like Gangnam Onni appeared. So based on real user reviews and those transparent prices, that the market grew massive very quickly. Then the world joined in. So the K culture, K-pop. So a lot of foreigners came to Korea. This made our market even bigger. And finally, that brings us today. So today we call it the mid-premium and continuous care era. So because the market grew so fast, a lot of like patients experience factory-like clinics. These clinics are cheap, but they rush patients in and out. So patients got tired of this. So now people would want more personalized, customized care and more of continuous care. So we're going to talk about that later, but that's where like Korea K-beauty is right now.
I feel like what I'm hearing repeatedly is continuous long-term care in Korea. And I guess like so the first takeaway is that clinical K-beauty is not the exported treatment list. It is the clinical logic underneath the treatment list.
Yeah, more of a system. Yes.
And this time, I'm gonna switch into Gwallee. So Gwallee roughly means care, upkeep, and maintenance over time. And in aesthetics, that changes the whole frame. Instead of waiting for a major correction, the patient is coming back for ongoing assessment, adjustment, and skin quality improvement that literally just the doctors talked about. So, Dr. Jang, what does Gwallee mean inside Korean clinical culture, and what does it look like in the rhythm of a clinic?
So a lot of actually, I see a lot of foreign patients. They are misled. I think because of a mistranslation. So they come to Korea for Gwallee. So they know that Koreans have great skin because they have good Gwallee. That is like more of a maintenance thing, but like it's directly translated to skin care. So they come to Korea and then they say they come for skin care, but mostly they understand it as a facial. So in Korea, if we say Gwallee, and if you're like well Gwalleed or like someone tell you you're in good Gwallee, that means you've done something that really like suits you, that really was needed to you. And then you look great, you look younger, you look pretty. That's what Gwallee actually means. So it's more of as I told you before, more of a continuous, like, it could be a maintenance, it could be a correction, but it's more of a holistic approach, I would say.
It's like a personal training, but for your skin and your looks, I guess.
Yeah, so I actually tell my patients it's like working out. You don't like expect to like have results doing like workouts once a month. So and actually my patients told me that she's doing Gwallee, and then she's saying that she's feels like setting up an installment savings account. So you like save it up and then you see the results later on. So
And then, Dr. Park, then how do you bring Gwallee into a US patient conversation?
I love this question because I think that's really been the basis of our clinic, when we opened about 6 years ago. And the word is actually kind of hard to say, right? For some Americans. And so when we say quality, I explain it as it's something that goes so much deeper than maintenance. Maintenance is kind of like a superficial translation to it. It means deeper levels of care. And I think that with quality, I say that it's something that like mothers say to daughters. It's something that fathers say to sons. It's intergenerational. So it's like you want to quality your hair, your skin, your body. It's like a very holistic approach. And the reason why I think that that's so prominent, but it's also making a big impact in the US market is because for a very long time, I think that there's a very common perception in the US market as that treatments are just sort of like one and done. So I'm going to get my CO2 laser and I'm done. And we all know that especially as we age and there's lots of different anatomical changes, it's never just one treatment, right? But that kind of bias is deeply entrenched in American culture. So when we opened our clinic, we created this system where, for example, if we said, okay, we have a treatment plan for you and it requires for you to come in once a month, but we know that we will be able to obtain visible transformational results. We would get a response saying, once a month, go to the clinic? That's crazy. That's insane. And I would say in Korea, it's not uncommon for people to go to the skincare clinic every 2 weeks, every 4 weeks, just for different kinds of treatment. And I think that conversation over the past several years, like I'm going to say the past decade, has changed a lot because I think that now you will see many, many practitioners adopt a quality philosophy, which is that let's have a long-term treatment. Let's think of it not as let's burn your face off with the laser and then you come back next year. Let's have like a very sort of more mindful treatment that takes into account multiple depths of the skin, structure, foundational elements with bone, I mean, all of these things, it's much more holistic. So I think that is a philosophy that's being adopted more.
I hear the every 2 weeks, the deeper care, Gwallee is like working out. And I want to move the conversation from those definitions into like how to translate that in terms of what can US clinics adopt, right? Because that is a big part of what we're doing in terms of the fellowship and what the conversation that we're having here. Dr. Park, directly to you, what do you think US clinics can adopt?
I think that it can adopt multiple things. One is a deep dive into the patient consultation and facial analysis. I think that when people look at videos of the in-depth consultation process that often goes on in Korea, and sometimes it's, just a lot of sometimes there's a lot of flair, right? I mean, using like 10 different color markers and marking all over the face and painting it up and talking about facial balancing, it's kind of theatrical and that's fine because it can convey a message. But I think the deep dive into analysis, I think also we at Aram were very early adopters of AI skin analysis. And I know Dr. Jung, you do so much work with AI consultation, AI skin analysis. So that's something that I think is table stakes, right? Every single practice now needs to be utilizing some form of really in-depth patient consultation and facial and body analysis tools. So that's very easy to do and the first step that I think every clinic needs to employ. And I think too, thinking about a long-term treatment plan. And I think at Aram, we have sort of this like secret membership model. And so what that is patients can't just sign on. We have to invite them to join. And we did that very purposely because we have a 12-month membership plan that allows for them to more easily be able to practice quality and also see realistic transformational results. So we did that also because I think that there's so many, and we can talk in the other webinars too about psychology and patient selection and patient expectations. And all of that is like fascinating, at least to me, conversation. And so being able to realistically meet patients' expectations and have a plan for that takes experience because, I'm sure between Dr. Jung and I, we have seen thousands and thousands and thousands of patients. and have treated complications and difficult cases and really handheld patients through difficult clinical situations. So I think that there's so much to dive into, especially in the next webinars.
Like Dr. Park said, Dr. Jung, with his clinics, he employs holistic consultation flows with like AI and everything. So what about you, Dr. Jung? What is transferable from Korea in your experience?
So I would say we call it the patient cycle or the patient flow. So the patient comes and goes and comes back. That's the whole flow. It does the consultation, does procedures, it gets the education. So this whole like system is transferable, I think. So if you just adopt the Gwallee, the meaning of Gwallee, you just think it's a continuous continuous treatment, continuous procedures. But if you just don't have the system, you'll like run out of procedures to do. You would need a very thorough analysis of the patient, and the patient also should be highly educated. She or he should know what he's doing. They have to know why they have to come back. So that whole patient cycle, the patient flow, I think that's quite transferable with the system, within the system, yes.
The value is in the system. We keep coming back to that. Dr. Park, what is one thing that you hope US providers take away from Korea's model?
I hope that US providers think globally. I think for a very long time, US aesthetic providers were thinking very sort of centrally. And then all of a sudden with these with social media, we are seeing that things are being done differently in Europe, in Asia, in the Middle East. And so I think that there's a little bit of hesitation, maybe sometimes also has a misunderstanding, thinking that things that are not non-US are inferior. And so I think that I would love to have US providers think globally. And I think that we're at that moment right now and think about long-term and quality. And I would say that I would love to see in the next 2-3 years for the general public to think that taking care of their skin and aesthetics and overall wellness, doing that, every 2 weeks, every 4 weeks is a very commonplace system and process.
So it's changing. The era is changing. So I don't know if everyone will agree with this, but we've been there. So we're in the high end of aesthetic medicine, I think. So we know what will happen. We know what's going to change. And I think it'll be best if you can learn head on and then prepare for the big change of all the concepts.
Okay, great. We have time for 1 or 2 audience questions. First one, Dr. Park, I'm curious from your clinical experience, where do you see Western dermatology most resistant to adopting Korean protocols or treatments? And is that resistance evidence-based or cultural?
I don't know if I would say that there's a lot of resistance now. I think that 7-10 years ago, there was maybe, just hesitation, curiosity, maybe even just suspicion about, kind of, is this just like a trendy thing to do? Is there truly innovation coming out of Korea? Like that was the sentiment. But I think now we see doctors of all specialties traveling to Korea and saying, I'm a K-beauty expert, right? So I think it's neither here or there. I think that it takes a lot of time and just experience to vet all of the different treatments. Actually, that's what takes the most time. Not every treatment that comes out of Korea is amazing. And there are things that always have to be translated to your patient population. And I feel like that's what I really hope that we can dive into at Vera Fellowship. My practice in New York City is not the same population as someone in a different town or a different state. And so it takes a lot more thought process from a business side too to determine what to adopt and not.
I see more questions around, for example, stacking and layering different treatments, which I believe we can cover in our third webinar. But to close out today's webinar for now, we have a very exciting announcement. I'm thrilled to share that Vera Fellowship has entered into a strategic partnership with Adam Aesthetic Academy to elevate our 2026 Clinical K-Beauty Fellowship. So this partnership will bring together our immersive educational experience that we've already planned with the clinical expertise, the industry relationships, and the global perspectives of Adam Academy's team. And clearly, as one of the pioneers in introducing the clinical K-beauty methodologies to the US, Dr. Park has seen success with translating these concepts into clinical practice in the US. So through this collaboration, you'll gain firsthand access to her clinical insights, cultural immersion, and real world applications that bridge the innovation in Korea with the implementation in the US. And so, to create that even more immersive experience, we have expanded the fellowship to 5 days and 4 nights. We'll be giving you additional time for in depth education or cultural exploration and more exclusive industry experiences throughout Korea. And with this expanded programming, the fellowship investment is going to increase to $10,000 after July 1st. However, we're honoring the early bird pricing of $7,500 for those who reserve their seats before the deadline. If you've been considering joining us, now is a perfect time. We can't wait to have you and experience Korea with you in the future of clinical K-beauty in Seoul. Dr. Park?
I'm so excited for this launch. I think that we didn't even get a chance to dive into as much to the Vera app. And I think that, the future of aesthetics lies in the technology. And I think being able to connect the very best qualified patient to the very best qualified provider is the biggest sort of mismatch and difficulty in our industry. I think every single patient wants to go to the person that will be able to treat their condition the best. And so I'm really excited that you and your team are really, I think, disrupting and providing a solution for this gap in the industry. And I think the fellowship provides such an amazing opportunity for us to learn so much from our Korean colleagues who are doing really amazing work. And so I'm very excited for us to partner together and for us to continue to learn from such amazing colleagues both here and in Korea.
Thank you so much, Dr. Park. So, well, that concludes the webinar for today. Thank you, Dr. Jung, for joining. Thank you, Yoon, for moderating for us. And thank you, the audience, for joining us. We'll see you next time.